Okay. All right. Welcome to the 2026 spring edition of our State of the Server. It's been a long time since we've done it. I don't even know if I remember how to do it, but we'll see if we can remember what we've done in the past. Talk about the server's past, present, and future. And if this is your first time, welcome. Hopefully we like to do these. We'd like to say every time that we're going to do these more often, but really it's a question of what we've been doing, what's noteworthy, and whether there's been enough that's gone on worth talking about. So without further ado, we'll kick this thing off. Sentries and Up will moderate chat. They'll also pin messages. And we're going to try to do this. I just remembered like 30 minutes ago that Foxy, that we wanted to try to do this in a slightly more podcasty style so that anybody who wants to listen to the podcast version and or if we stick it on YouTube, the YouTube version, that the way this acts more like a question and answer thing where you ask the question out loud and then I answer it. Because I recall that in past SOTSs, I just kind of start talking about the answer to a question that if somebody was listening to would have no idea like what I was talking about. So when it comes to the Q&A stuff, we'll try to treat it more like that. And then you can follow along with Foxy's cool State of the Server thingy. But I won't let myself get distracted and we'll get this thing kicked off. So I think we'll just go down the list of recently released stuff and just kind of rehash what's gone down. I'll try to make it snappy since I think we have a lot to talk about today. So first and foremost, Homes 2.0. This probably doesn't apply to 98% of the people in this SOTS right now, but it is a required precursor to advertising so that we can retain players for longer. It works if you don't have a town. It gives you a little instanced version of the world that you and only you can go into and allow you can invite your friends in and build in peace and not get ganked with the full perms of being able to grant access to your friends to either live with you or just come hang out. It's not a very used feature right now, but that's just because we don't have a lot of new players that are joining organically. So as everybody's already aware, everybody who joins is basically a recruit, and so they go straight into a town, and they're given the lay of the land by the town owners, hopefully. Or they're maybe just left to rot, given a set of gear, and pointed towards a beacon and said good luck. But hey, that's to each their own. So Homes 2 is something that probably has a couple bugs here and there, and it's something that I will turn my attention to fixing and or updating as necessary once we get new players joining all the time, at which point I think any bugs or issues with it will rear their ugly heads. So that's all there is to that. Sliders Reach.
Move on, can you open up the channel for messages?
Oh, people want
it's to still speak. Locked.
Har.
Okay. For what it's worth, I don't think any of us are looking at any DMs anymore, so if you have questions, put them in there.
Sure.
The staff team will pin it.
Cool. Yes, that's the goal. Is that if your question isn't already covered in the list of questions, then feel free to ask now that you can speak.
Yep. As they get pinned, I'll throw them in our discussion board here.
Yeah.
Well,
so since Sliders Reach is next on the list to talk about, that is almost uniquely Foxy's baby. So I'm going to let him talk all about it.
Sure. So, as many of you know, in the past, our boat races have been pretty much secluded to just Yuletide. Instead, this year, obviously, we decided to do Sliders Reach, which is basically like a permanent hub for our boat races. I think people have enjoyed it, hopefully anyways. Our goal, like, long-term, I guess, to give people an idea is, like, we do want to add more tracks as time goes on. So that's, if that's something you're interested in, let me know or apply for development team role. There's not really a whole lot else to talk about, though. I think most people know what it is, how it works. Yeah, if there's any questions, you can throw them in the chat.
Hey, it's permanent boat racing. We promised it for years. This is a minor segue, but since I don't think this is listed on here, if there was anything even more important than Homes 2.0 that I think is that's being worked on right now and is required for advertising as a modernized /help, with the goal that it covers almost everything there is to know about Loka in game without having to go to the wiki. The wiki is meant to provide the ridiculously granular, like detailed information and thorough information about stuff. But if you want to just know basics and have guides and quests that tell you about stuff, that's where /help will come into play. And so, as an example, one of the help topics in there would probably be boat racing. And if you click on it, you can learn about it, and then you click a button, and then it'll basically give you a quest to go to Sliders Reach. So that's the goal for /help. Because a lot of people are going to be confused when they join, because we're the great factions townie server that has neither factions nor townie. So, but you got to use those key phrases. In other words, otherwise people don't know what you're talking about. So, at any rate, moving on to the recently released Witch Hunter World Boss. I think that went over very well, and I think everybody who's been farming it has been having fun with it, and I know every admin has had an absolute blast watching people get absolutely smeared by the Witch Hunter, and certainly something we would like to add more of when we have the opportunity. It's also probably a good opportunity to say, if you have any experience or know your way around Mythic Mobs, the plugin, that's basically how that works. So, and you're interested in making bosses for the server, then again, dev team application is on the forums. And I don't know if you want to add anything about that, Foxy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting, because I think when we released it, a lot of people had mixed opinions on what it should be, especially just with like how the scaling works and everything like that. I guess to be blunt, I think the way that we have it implemented now is mostly what we envision in terms of like a world boss. We discussed doing like a sort of dungeon-esque thing for it, where you'd be in your own little like world. But for the time being, like, this is kind of how we're going to implement bosses from here on. We would, like, I mean, as Kripp said, we would like to do more, but it's just tricky, like, because Mythic Mobs require a lot of development time. I mean, even just doing the Witch Hunter, like, we obviously had the Witch Hunter from, Halloween, and even just getting that to the point where it was, workable for a world boss with, like, proper scaling and proper, like, damage management was a little bit more difficult than we expected. So, if you are interested, it would be very helpful. So yeah, that's about all I've got for that one.
Just to shine a light a little bit on more of the things that he was talking about in terms of like fanciness that we considered adding before launching it was we know there's going to be issues with like world PvP since it's not instance in any way. But we've noticed kind of an interesting, or at least at the beginning, there seemed to be a level of cooperation amongst the players where everybody kind of agreed not to kill each other until the thing was dead. And maybe that's just because it's yellow tagged, but and I know that's not always gone that way, but we were worried that it would be so popular that nobody would actually be able to get credit doing it, and that's half true. But what we thought when we were developing it was just like, hey, we have a Witch Hunter, let's make it scale. Let's just stick it out in the damn world so players can, have some PvE content, and screw dealing with like all kinds of advanced like party dungeon tech until we think we absolutely need it. So it could be that world bosses in the future are just like this one, or if the need arises, we'll consider something more fancy. But I think it's fun that everybody can just pop in and do it and don't have to party up yet. So, because that takes a lot of tech and was not a priority. So, but I think it's cool.
Can you give sentries permissions to pin, by the way?
Dude, what happened to all of our permissions? Oh, pinning is a new permission. That's right. In Discord. That's the issue.
That'll do it.
Great, but where is it? Ugh. Pin message. You cannot modify this position because none of your roles have it. Well, rude. Huh?
Yeah, the owner of the server can't.
I gotta go literally log on to LokaBot in order to do it. Yeah, well, I am not the owner of the Loka Discord on purpose because I don't want to be in everybody's weird town chats. Okay, state of the server. Pause. And permissions. Sentries. Pin. Bingo. Does the works. I'm going to assume so and move on for now. Okay. Next up on the list was our minor fishing update, which was a part of our 15-year Loka anniversary, which is crazy to talk about and think about. And anybody who's younger than the server is, that makes me feel old. But regardless of that, we just wanted to breathe a little life into fishing just to make it worth doing. I know that there were some people that had far more comprehensive interests in fishing, like brand new features and changing fishing to be like the Stardew Valley or whatever type fishing mechanic. There's all kinds of reproductions of that. We just didn't want to invest a bunch of time and energy in new features per se. We just wanted to make it so that fishing had a purpose and gave rewards, had some more achievements. And I think it's gone well. It's been fun to see people constantly at least the Calros docks fishing. I think that's just kind of a fun little community thing that just happens to be happening, and it's fun to watch. So kudos to all of you people. I will reiterate for the final time that it matters where you fish. It matters where you fish, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So, okay. And I know that there's interest in fishing industry. That's not something we're considering at this time, but I'm not saying never, but we'll think about it whenever, if ever, we get to like a big towns progression update, which is generally thought to happen, but is not on the near-term roadmap. So I will let Foxy talk about our recently updated new docks, since he kind of spearheaded the effort leading that development thing. But I think it's awesome, and I think everybody's liking it. But Foxy, feel free to harp on about it.
Sure. So it's kind of funny, actually. The new docks project precedes my time on the development team, which is 5 years now. So before I even joined, we had actually started them. Originally, it was our intention just to kind of get like a slightly updated version out, in lieu of Homes 2.0, and then it kind of evolved into a whole new kind of project with lots of intricacies, lots of new tech, lots of new pieces to it. But our amazing development team put a lot of time and effort into making them as good as possible. And I think, as a lot of people have maybe picked up on, each dock kind of has a very distinct flavor to it. Even in kind of the small things, like each dock has kind of like a lighthouse-esque thing, but like Garama's is that weird stone statue, and then Calros, has the big fire tower, and then Ascalon has like a true, lighthouse-looking building. And, stuff like that is kind of what we really wanted to hone in on as we, in the future move towards more content that is sort of centered around the lore of each continent. And it's something we want to expand on as time goes on as well. Like, we put a lot of time and thought into, for Garama, for example, Garama's lore is very, biome centric. So instead of having, just random, markets, each little like market tent is, centered around a biome. So there's, a desert one, there's a mesa one, there's a savanna one, and then Calros is kind of centered more around like the houses of Calros, which is something that, I think will become more evident as time goes on, and we make more quests. But the docks really kind of set us up to be able to do that, going forward. And that's one of our main goals as time goes on, is to expand the, quest arm of the server into something that people can actually spend a lot of time doing and exploring. Obviously right now we have, a couple main quests. We have our holiday quest, we have Waterstone, and then we have the indie quest line. But as time goes on, we want to make the world feel more lived in. And I think the docks kind of became the first step towards doing that in a very real way. So hopefully people are enjoying them, enjoying the customization of them as well. I think next step is forward for Loka's, development and content.
Keen observers will remember that we laughably said the docs were going to come in early December, but that didn't happen. But as a result, the build team cooked so hard that it really truly became like a question of just let them cook. And then at some point it was like, wait a minute, refreshing the world seems like a great opportunity for an anniversary content release. And so that's when we had a new sort of release, a deadline for it, as it were. And as a result, we have these cool docs with cool custom everything, and it's awesome. So anyway, we're chuffed about that, to borrow an English person's phrase. So yeah. Last on the first list of things is updated rules. Radis isn't here, but if I recall correctly, and I hope I do recall correctly, he was spearheading that effort. We knew that there were some rules that were kind of on there since like 2015 or older that probably needed to go. And it was just an opportunity to clean things up. And I think we removed the somewhat confusing extra posts on that forum thread that people thought were not in the original list. But if that's true, and I believe it is, I don't worry about what I'm saying because it's irrelevant. All the rules you need to know are there, and they're cleaned up, refreshed, modernized, and that's pretty much it. So the goal of rules, like any other server, is rules, but it's important to sort of reiterate that we write our rules, we deliberate furiously over them, because Magpie and I both were extreme sticklers for language and wording, and so the things that are on that rules list are worded precisely on purpose. And so if there's not specifics to a rule, it's because we intentionally leave it open for us to use as necessary. And then in other cases, it's quite specific because we only care about one specific thing. So, but I think nobody likes to talk about rules all that much. So needless to say, we did it, we done it. Now we can update our rules again in 2036. How about that? Which Loka will hopefully still be around for. Cough, cough. Although if Minecraft updates continue to look like the most recent one at Minecon or whatever, I don't know. I know that's a question that came up and I honestly haven't looked at it, and I won't preempt that. I'll answer it later. So anyway, okay, so that completes our recently released features and content. Upcoming features and content. Economy is on this list, and it is both recently released and upcoming. I suppose it's something that we constantly are looking at now that what we have are tools and metrics and statistics and charts and graphs of the way things are going on the server that we believe is finally somewhat accurate. So, Foxy, you're rubbing your mic against your clothes or something. I don't know. Weirdo. Okay. Anyway, we are always dubious when players throw out the inflation term because it's both a little bit true, but also not necessarily a bad thing, because inflation's a constant concept, and the way that the server works, and most video games, by the way, have this, because there's always going to be an infinite income. Players are always able to like summon an income out of nowhere, which is not what reality is like, where there's a finite amount of money that goes around between all the people that own money and those that print it, etc. But whenever you have a server like Loka or any other game, the more players that you add to the system, the more players that consume or that generate income. And not all of them are required to spend all of that, basically. So it is natural that as Loka grows, so too does the cost of things, because everybody has more money, and so everybody starts to charge more, thus you get inflation. However, it is also fair to say that the amount of money that people have versus the amount of opportunities they have to spend it is definitely disproportionate, and something we're working on. And so that both requires adding new sinks, but it also requires making things more expensive, because they should be, because, you know, they haven't been updated ever. Like, you know, one day one NPC could sell pearls and name tags, and then we left that NPC like that for like 6 years. And then Pikachu surprise face when we finally looked and saw what people were like selling e-pearls for on the market. And so obviously nobody was going to buy them that way. And so we've just finally had an opportunity to sort of gather our data and get it all right and then make informed decisions based on data rather than anecdotal decisions based on like, well, I feel like things are too expensive or not. So it's a constant thing that will probably change and hopefully will change a lot more often than we used to. But we are looking at every angle and trying to buff and nerf things as necessary with upcoming things, including like reevaluating shrines, which need to be buffed, infested, which has already been nerfed, and Nyx quests, which kind of have to be redone, but are also meant to be at least slightly a competitive way for the PvE enjoyers to also grind. So it is a constant thing, and we're keeping an eye on it. Although it is quite boring, and it's also one of those things that, for a Minecraft server, is a little less interesting to do than, you know, some sort of uber big game like EVE Online, which has no less than three actual legitimate economists that work for the company, because that game is hardcore, but that's a story for another time. I suspect there are probably questions. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as some people may have noticed as well, in the updates channel, if you follow that closely, Crypt posted a little photo of the tool that we have now to look at the economy. And we definitely have a much better grip on what we're doing now that we have true data to look at as to like where people are making money, how it's being spent, how it's being transferred between people. So, I mean, I think the economy's, you know, it went untouched for so long, but I think it's something now that, based on this tool, you know, it will probably see a lot more change going forward and a lot more of a dynamic management behind it rather than just like oh, well, I guess we should probably balance things for the first time in 2 years, you know.
We never felt like we could accurately balance things, because every time I tried to take a stab at economic data, I discovered, you know, a month later that we were capturing something wrong or missing something, and so it was always just not quite right, and I never trusted the data that I was getting. And now I think I've got my head around it slightly, but I am no statistician, or I have no background in statistics, and I suck at math, so it's hard. But AI has been helpful these days in teaching me what to do. Sort of. Okay, next up is advertising. I feel like we've said this many times, but it feels like it's actually happening now as we're having discussions with real YouTubers or members of our community who know big YouTubers. And this is a great opportunity to speak to everybody here and share it amongst your friends as well. If you have relationships with medium to big YouTubers, and we're talking medium is as like 100,000 subscribers or more, and you have ways of reaching out to these people or think that they might in any way be interested in making content about Loka, please DM me, because it's something that we are actively trying to pursue. As in like actively for Ray and not for Play. If you've noticed that there haven't been a lot of things going on the server newly that aren't other than like bug fixes here and there, it's because I've pretty much been heads down only trying to work on things that work for new players and advertise. So that's a lot of discussions with DMs and group chats and stuff like that. And that's the time has come for this 15-year-old Minecraft server that I'll toot my own horn and say, this server is too good for so many people to not know about. Loka needs to get its name out there in a real big way. But I'll be honest about let's just say the theme, the demographics that we're shooting for with regards to advertising. Everybody who's here and everybody who's in the 1.9 plus sword pot PvP community pretty much knows about Loka. I consider the community largely tapped. Everybody who's more or less interested in it and isn't from a sort of community or part of the world that only kind of plays on their own kind of servers. Like there's partial, what am I trying to say? There are specific communities like in Europe that they more or less play on their own kinds of servers. They don't really reach out, and they're not going to play on a US server for perfectly justifiable reasons. what we're trying to do is expand Loka's population into something more than just sweaty PvP. Because there's interesting things about Loka with regards to builds and building and upcoming PvE, which we keep adding to, and role-playing, which we would like to expand our feature set for. Like, Loka's not just meant to be only a Conquest server. If it was, we wouldn't do things like these cool new docks, because it's just like, that's a lot of build effort for a population of players that may not really be that interested in it. 90% of the players who come and are recruits might have never been to a dock. They will have gone from spawn into a town, into a beacon, into a fight, died, rinse and repeat. And those are the only places on Loka they've ever seen. It would be interesting to pull statistics about how many players have actually explored like parts of the world, but I know that there have been some in the past where I've seen like a player who I've seen their name and known them for 5 years go like, oh, I've never been to Calros before. And I'm like, what? So anyway, we're trying to expand the demographics of Loka and diversify a little bit and get a lot more types of new and interesting players, more mature or older players that are likely to be able to make like YouTube videos about us organically and stuff like that. So anyway, TLDR, advertising is hot right now. If you know a guy or a girl or a streamer or a Twitch streamer and they're pretty big, and we're talking like reasonably big, 100K or more subs, let me know, because we will hit up everybody that we can right now. So feel free to ask questions about that. I will cover later. I don't know what Foxy was being cheeky about with regards to question mark. Oh, probably the thing we're releasing at the end of the SOTS.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to save that, or do you want to?
The thing about it is, if I say it now, there's going to be so many people who are like, I don't care about everything else you're going to say. Do the thing, release the thing. So we're going to leave it to the end, and reveal it at the end. Okay, so then moving on to player submitted topics and questions. This is the part where Foxy's now going to ask me stuff, or he's going to at least just like read the question out loud or whatever, so that we can talk about it.
Yeah. So also, it's a little bit different order than what's. Oh wait, no, I did update that order. Never mind. The live questions that I've got only on my end.
Oh, and I would say that feel free to mix and dip into the pinned messages if they are, I don't know, more. If we're already talking about it or something like that, I'll just stop looking at Discord and start reading the trolley comments that people are saying, and then you just ask me questions, and then I will answer them. That way I don't.
Yeah. So the first question. This is the long asked. Will we ever add the Knockback sync plugin to Loka?
So we probably won't, and we probably never. I wasn't gonna say we never would, but it's so controversial, clearly, even amongst like our current community. I'm trying to find there's a forum post about it, and I will say that the up and down vote stuff that people do on forums, we do look at that sometimes. That's something that's kind of meaningful. Even if it is a very small percentage of players that are up and down voting suggestions, if you are it's our view that if you're on the forums, that means that you're paying closer attention to Loka, and you care about Loka in a lot more of a deep way than probably the average person does, which means that I generally going to value your opinion a little bit more. So if you've taken the time to go to the forums and read a suggestion post and up and down vote it, I feel like that is a slightly more intelligent representation of how the community feels about something. And those KB sync suggestions have majority disagreement, like downvotes. And while I completely understand why such a thing exists and why people go for it, its very existence is a problem that I don't think Loka would benefit by having. The problem with Loka is that the greatest thing is and the worst thing about Loka is how international our community is. It's awesome that everybody plays on this one server, and everybody's meeting people from across the world, learning new languages, learning how to insult each other's families in new and exciting ways. But in reality, in a real gaming circumstance, none of us should be playing with each other. We should all the U.S. East Coast folks should be playing with U.S. East Coast folks. Same with Europe. So it's unusual for a game like that has any PvP, to have a player from South America playing against a player from Turkey with some sort of a combined ping between the two of them of like 500 or 600 ms, and then everybody thinks everybody's lag switching. It's just not supposed to be that way. And the worst thing you can do, if you ask me, is try to modify the client, modify the server to adjust for that. It may succeed in very specific circumstance. It may also introduce weirdness in completely what should be normal circumstances. And it just feels like adding a weird layer of fuzzy prediction on top of the existing, netcode for how Minecraft basically works. And it gives, I think it gives not just me a funny feeling, but a lot of people too, which is why I think it's got a majority downvote. And while I think there could be people who say, oh, people just want to be laggers because laggers do better. I mean, that's probably true at some level, but when you start talking about like the toppest level of ranked PvP, I think those people are up there because they're actually good and not because they're abusing 120 ms or something like that. So
the other thing is just the maintainability of adding something like that. I mean, that plugin may just stop getting updates in a year or a month or 6 months. I mean, you never know with those types of things. And I mean, obviously the plugin seems to be pretty popular to some extent. But at the end of the day, like, we don't really want to be dependent on something else, rather than just kind of and Loka's notorious for this. We don't, other than literally at this point, the brewery plugin, I think every single other thing that exists on Loka has been made by Crypt. So there's literally nothing on the server that depends on anybody else except for him.
Prism, we had like log blocking and stuff like that. Like we use Prism for log block, which fortunately had a recent update. And other major things, World Guard, World Edit, everybody uses those, and an anti-cheat. We have a proprietary anti-cheat of our own, and we've got it mixed with another one. So, but yeah, right. It's extremely few plugins that we rely on, and most of those you just listed are replaceable to some extent. I mean, this would be something that would be hard to justify just because it would be so core to the way that Loka would feel. I also think that there's probably a non-zero chance that Mojang eventually maybe tries to do something about this or optimizes the game in such a way that it becomes less drastic. As to how they would do that, who knows? But it seems like they're getting a lot more comfortable with modifying the core of the game code than they used to be. So, a lot of the recent updates, regardless of what people may think, have been more performant. Had we not been updating versions, the 500 player fight would never have been possible. So, yeah. That said, Mojang is not incentivized to improve their multiplayer code all that much because it's just not. If their current release, well, we'll talk. We'll in order not to make this question last forever, I'll go on to other thoughts about Mojang when we talk about like this.
Yeah, there's a question later about that will.
I had a feeling. Okay.
Yep. All right. Next up is, will we make water on Rivina corrupted, similar to Zyre?
Sounds like a good LCR question. I don't see the benefit of that. Like, I mean, I can see why I know that people don't like people who jump into water for kiting reasons. It's just that Rivi is supposed to be Blitz Conquest. So if it's corrupted on Rivi, it feels like it should be corrupted everywhere. We have mutators. I don't know if they ever come around. There's supposed to be a mutator that makes water corrupted. But it would seem weird to do it on Rivi and not everywhere. It's either all everywhere or nowhere. And I think somebody pointed this out in a post or something, or in Discord, but I think they said the thing that I would say, which if you're worried about somebody kiting in the water, then you chasing them in the water, you're part of the problem. You're not contributing to the fight. So it's a freedom of the player to do that. I don't think it's something that's worth making specifically Rivina's water corrupted for. If that was something that had like overwhelming community support, and that's something that I think we could, like I said, bring up with the LCRs, then, I mean, it's not like it's hard to do. I just don't know if I see the value in that personally.
Yeah, I mean, if people really think that that's something we should do, definitely take it to the LCRs because we'll take that pretty seriously. I think the nature of Rivina is unfortunate because the terrain is very difficult for Conquest. It's no secret that, making a Conquest Isle a jungle maybe is somewhat questionable in a certain capacity. But at the same time, like, there's only 20 people on the tile, and the time for Conquest is much shorter. So if you're kiting for, a minute, 2 minutes at a time, like, you're wasting, literally 15 or 20% of the fight potentially. So I think it's less like, I think people want to get kills on Rivi, but ultimately, like, if you're kiting in the water, you're not playing the objective, so it doesn't really matter for the outcome of the fight, I don't know if making water corrupted on Rivi would really change the outcome of fights. I think it might make them go faster, but they already go pretty fast, so...
We'll add a set of mutators for Rivi and say corrupted water is one of them or something. How about that?
Perhaps. The next question is for gigafights, so 250 player plus fights. Would we make the delay between warps longer?
Yes, this question. That is a discussion that needs to be had internally. I get where that comes from, but those gigafights are usually gigafights because there's a lot of players that are not necessarily regulars that will join and play and likely get QD'd instantly. And then if you ask them to wait for 10 or 12 minutes to come back so that they can get dropped again in under 30 seconds, that feels bad. And I don't think okay, maybe longer warps, but then maybe extend the fight duration beyond 60 minutes. I guess those fights don't, they don't really, sorry, got distracted by a text message. They don't last 60 minutes very often. I mean, they do end fairly quickly. Maybe they last longer than usual, but I think it's asking the wrong question about the myriad problems that we have with gigafights, which is that there are too many players and perhaps they do not die quick enough. I think extending warp timers makes the fight likely to end quicker and be a less fun experience for everybody. I think that's the kicker, is that gigafights are a place where a lot of players die very, very quickly, and if they can never come back, because basically I can see where, and you can see I'm kind of live reacting to this, so I haven't really thought it through. But you can imagine a world where even if we added 2 minutes to a warp timer, that might wind up with gigafights ending quicker, which is a kind of a buzzkill for everybody who joined. There's almost an intended amount of epicness required for a gigafight, and if it ends after the first warp or second, and all these, we'll say 75 players got brought on for this first fight of their lives, and it's this biggest thing ever, and they got to spend a sum total of 63 seconds living in the battle zone before they got died, and then the fight was over. That kind of feels bad, man. I think the bigger problem, or biggest problem of all with gigafights, is that they're too big for Conquest, and they're too big for the way that we decided that the TGen and the Inhib are 75 blocks or less apart. It's a point where we have big enough tiles. I'm just gesturing with my arms as though anybody can see me, but I'm making a very big tile with my arms, just to picture this in your head if you can. The tiles are huge, so that you can imagine that we actually have a ton of room on tiles for there to be fighting around the tile. It's just, it happens to be, because it's an old system that wasn't designed for that much people, that everybody's clustered into this tiny middle area. I think the goal, the biggest change Conquest probably needs to support big fights, is more objectives spread around the entire battle zone that can break up everybody being clustered into one area, which is good for every reason that you can imagine. It's more interesting, it spreads out players, which is better for the server, it's better for clients because a lot of computers suffer when they try to render 249 other Minecraft people on your screen. I think that's where the focus probably needs to go, and not trying to dick with, warp timers, which is going to make people have a less fun experience. That's my feels.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is we haven't really had an insanely large fight in a while. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the biggest fight is still the 580 player fight from November, if I remember correct. I could go check, but it is interesting because at some point Conquest probably does need some kind of thing added to deal with those fights. I mean, if people have ideas, we're open to them. We don't really ourselves even know how it would function. Like, one of the big debates is always like, is it something that is inherently placed on the tile by like pre-placed, or is it like placed, by the people in the fight? Like, how does that work? Is it something that moves? We had that idea come up like a while ago, where it's like a big movable like structure thing, which would be kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the direction, though. I think. I mean, Crypt brings up a really good point. Like, if even 2 minutes, like, that's enough to win a fight. I mean, you can totally just down the rest of the people on the other team and completely destroy the core in that amount of time. So,
I have to go to the bathroom, and I will be back. So, Foxy, I assume there's a couple questions you can just take on your own for a bit. So go for it.
Yeah,
and I'll be back.
I can run through here. Oh yeah, okay. I'm gonna jump way ahead to red tagged RI. So, as a lot of people know, in the past we've discussed this idea of having, a more dangerous version of the resource island that has more loot on it. I think this comes up particularly now because of the heavy nerf that RI has just received. I've heard a few people that are basically saying that, their typical 2 to 3 hour RI run is now like 6,000 to 8,000 shards rather than like 18, which was absurd. And this is where we want it to be ideally. Now, in the future, we have intentions to basically create a new resource island or resource islands that will exist as a fully red tagged zone, where world PvP is basically back to the way that it used to be on the resource island. I know that a lot of people want to see this come quickly. Unfortunately, it's probably something that's going to take a while. In the meantime, like, there's a lot of different pieces of content that we want to get to first. Most notably is, ocean temples. I know somebody asked about this earlier. I can talk more about that in a minute, but ocean temples, deep dark, trial chambers, all of kind of the new things in Minecraft kind of precede this, because we feel, at least internally, that our time is better spent there on, more interesting things rather than, just trying to recreate something that we already have made on the server. Obviously, with the new 26.2 update, a red tagged RI. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Mojang announced that basically they're going to be adding Sulfur to the game. So that kind of gives some more relevance to the idea of a new RI, and is probably going to light a bit of a fire under our ass, so to speak, to do it a little more quickly, depending on how we choose to implement that, if it is through the RI or if it's through, the Nether instead or whatever. But it's kind of a long-term goal that we have. We also, we really want to see where things end up sitting with the RI long-term. Especially with advertising, because I think it's really important that we understand the way that the current RI functions as a yellow tag, and with a larger player base before we start to even envision a red tagged RI. One of the big questions is, how large will it be? How many ores is it going to give? Will we nerf the yellow tagged RIs again, and then take the current output as the new red tagged RI's output? We're not really sure. And we don't want it to be like a guarantee that you go there and then you just come out, with your ores and all is fine and good. We want it to be something that is definitely more dangerous, but also more rewarding. And balancing that is always kind of tricky. So
I have returned.
Welcome back. I just talked about the red tagged RI. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say. Anything that's top of mind.
I don't know if you said this, but one of the reasons that we haven't added it yet is because we don't need it yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of the danger of it depends on the size of the player base.
Yep.
So until the player base is large enough to justify it, we can't really see it. The other thing that I pointed out was like just seeing how a yellow tagged RI functions long term will definitely inform us about how the red tagged RI would have to function. You know, how big it would be, what the layout is like, and whatnot. So
yeah,
we can.
I have mixed feelings about. I don't want to bring this up and labor on it because we've got enough to talk about. But is the red tag RI even really necessary? But I think the question is, do people go to yellow infesteds still, or does everybody go to red? I think people do go to the yellow. So, and that's basically a 1-to-1 parallel. So if people do like to go to the yellow infesteds to grind and don't want the sweaty ganks, then that is evidence enough that people might want to go to the yellow RIs versus the red ones. But those are kind of far enough off that we can move on and discuss that later, since it's not an upcoming issue per se.
Yeah, we can jump back up to this question here. Will spears be nerfed again?
I think they need to be buffed. I haven't watched a lot of Conquest fights lately because I've been so busy, but I don't see a lot of use of them, but maybe I'm, like I said, maybe I'm out of it. I worry we've nerfed them so much that they're not really viable and nobody wants to take a chance of trying to nail somebody from the air because, for example, they get dropped. So I don't know the answer to that question at this time, but this is news to me that people think they are too strong. I think people are annoyed by them because they're good for getting away. But I don't know what more context there is to this question. I guess maybe the question requires a follow-up, which is, in what way do we believe spears are OP? And controversially, how many people believe that versus don't? So moving on, until we get a reply on that one, I think.
Yeah, so the next question is thoughts on a random boss mob Conquest Mutator.
I don't know what that would entail. Just throwing a witch hunter in the middle of a fight, or is the boss mob?
That's how it was. That's how it was described to me. So I think that's kind of the idea there.
Does not sound interesting. Unless I'd rather it be like there's a boss mob that takes the place of the TGen, and it's just you have to defend or attack that thing, and that's the whole goal. I don't know. It's an interesting thought, but I believe there are way too many mutators that we listed and never implemented that we should probably get around to first before thinking about something like that.
Yeah, the other thing is, I mean, we just don't have the boss mobs yet. It would be funny. It could be interesting. I mean, I suppose you could set the mob. You could, have something you have to do, and then the mob fights for you or something. But even that's kind of a little bit silly, I think, in a way, because Conquest is meant to be, separate from PvE. I mean, we'd rather probably implement, random world bosses of some type, or, summonable bosses or whatever, and do something like that rather than spend our time, making and tailoring a boss mob for Conquest, because it's just really not, it really wouldn't function that well. In effect, like, your players in your town are your boss mobs, like they're your fighting force, not some random witch hunter or whatever that would spawn. So
yeah, I don't know how that would scale. So also
I'm gonna run for like 2.5 minutes, but I'll give you a question.
Okay.
Will Mercenary Towns be removed?
No. Next question.
I thought that was going to take
I
longer
can
to
say
answer.
more about it, but
I mean, if you want to talk more about it,
Yeah,
maybe.
I can. I'll try to give a reiteration. I don't know. I'm running out of words today. Apparently, I'll review why would they exist in the first place. Merc Towns exist because the players wanted them to exist. The players and the alternative to no Merc Towns is going back to the system we had in the past, where there are 3 times as many trash towns all on every continent, because everybody keeps a town alive on every continent in order to have a place to move back to chase wherever the war is going to go. And then there were people who owned towns and didn't want to let go of them in order to participate in a war on a different continent. And so they'd either have to trust some rando with their town, which went well or poorly. And then they'd have to, incur that 30-day join problem thing. It was bad. And it's one of those things where I understand people want there to be some semblance of like quote unquote loyalty to your continent, but that's it's not as realistic as it sounds. And more importantly, it's not as fun for gameplay. So it's one of those circumstances where it was a system that the players kind of wanted and then enjoyed once they had. And it's more fun than it is realistic. And I think it's just a Minecraft game after all. And I believe we've reiterated this point after point, like why there's no limits on Merc Towns, because it would just mean that proxies come back. People, it's just an unnecessary restriction. I do understand, even though I don't think this actually happens, it being weird that there's like 1 town on Garama, and then they have 11 mercs, and the town that actually lives on Garama is like 4 people. I don't think that happens all that often, and I don't think the numbers are that skewed. I could see an argument being made for like that the majority of towns in an alliance need to live in that, live on that continent. But again, the minute you add those limits, players are just going to get around them by doing stupid things we don't want them to do, which is, again, proxy towns. And so proxy towns were not fun. Nobody really liked them. Everybody's annoyed by them, and everybody would crap on each other all day long about them. So we don't want to go back to that system. And also, like, I don't think things would change the way people might want them to if Merc Towns weren't real. Like, if you think it would give you a better shot on your continent, I don't know that I agree. Players are going to go where they need to make things happen, and they're not going to just throw their hands up and go, oh no, I can't Merc on Calros, so I guess I won't fight there. No, they'll just move there anyway. So it's more fun to have it that way, I think, than it is. It's unnecessarily restrictive to turn a bunch of restrictions on for that. And I'll just go ahead and say this too in case it comes up. Like the idea about either lowering or increasing the number of towns that could be in an alliance. Again, players are going to move where they need to. They're going to make things happen. So the assumption that if you reduce the number of towns in an alliance to like 6, that it's going to suddenly create all these extra alliances and all these more fun fights for 2nd and 3rd place. Realistically, that's never really happened because players want to be involved in the most cool thing going on the server every month. And they're not going to be so loyal to the town, at least all the recruits won't, that they're going to not do what they need to do to be in the wars. And so if that means Concord as a good example of a town that could, in theory and in feature-wise, the game design-wise, like Loka is intended that if Concord wanted to go it alone and not be in an alliance, but still have 1,000 players, they could win by themselves. They could be like an alliance. They could win an entire month all by themselves. This is completely feasible on purpose on Loka. So anyway, it's just not. I think it's much more fun for people to be able to play Conquest, to have the Merc system the way that it is. And it is not fun to have a bunch of restrictions that prevent you from forgetting to play Conquest. TLDR.
It sounds like the channel got locked for some reason. If you want to look into that problem. I guess to add a little bit though, like, I don't know if you said this already, but like the reason that Merc Towns exist and the reason that the alliances have the cap is basically to get rid of the proxy town on every continent issue where there was like...
I just said that.
I mean, I don't know how many... Yeah, I don't know how many towns there are now, but getting rid of the crappy hole-in-the-ground towns, allowing people to have good towns is kind of a big goal. Oh yeah, speaking of that, I guess we can talk about. Actually, I'll go back up this way. Are there any plans for new TGen and Inhib modules?
No. There are, like, I think there are ideas about them, but they are not priority at this time. If the question is like, if the follow-up question is like, well, what is priority and specifically for Conquest? I think the thing that we really would rather work on is the policies revamp is more important, I think, than module meta at this time. Although I don't think those two things couldn't also happen
something
at the
else.
same time.
Something else that's, I guess, relevant to say is that, I mean, modules are kind of at a point now where I think we can leave them and they can be left and not be a problem.
Oh, I'm going to interject. I don't know if it was Chick Pro or maybe it was Pig Gang. I don't know if Pig Gang's idea or if somebody else's idea. Somebody had a really cool idea for a policy. And it's so exciting I might just implement it. Just period. It was a policy that allowed there was almost like a pick bans face for modules for a month. And it would just like take whatever modules were like used the month before and then they were just banned from use. So like you just couldn't use them for the following entire month just to force a module shakeup. And it sounded like fun to me. Maybe it can replace. We weren't going to do this without a policy revamp, but I don't think we're going to do a policy revamp anytime soon. And people love to have money sinks. So what's probably going to go away is the fast boat travel policy. It will no longer be a policy. It will simply be something every player on the server can use. Anybody can do it. You just have to pay for it every time you do it. So, because it's arguably quite a strong policy, to be honest. It's not only is it convenient, which is why everybody picked it, but if you think about the fact that the people who own the continent can like return to it instantly in a way nobody else can, there's advantages to that, which are kind of anyway. But it seems like a good money thing, so we're just going to make it so that everybody can fast travel if they want. They just have to pay like however many shards we decide to do it, and then we'll just replace it with that crazy module. Even though I don't think we have the data necessarily to know which modules to ban next month, but I suspect we could just pick a couple. Like it's not a secret what everybody uses. So yeah.
Next question. Will Loka ever make changes to make Conquest active on all 3 continents at once?
So I've talked about this on the forums. It's not a... Jesus, Foxy. What are you, sitting in a metal chair? It is not a bug of the system that Conquest is slow on specific continents. It is completely up to the nature of what players are doing or want to do that creates a hot continent or a boring continent. And we're fine with that. We're absolutely 100% fine with that. It's not a bug. And that said, despite the fact that it's commonly broken, and I'm hoping that I got it working for the next month, the concept that there's now second and third places with rewards on continents is meant to add some Conquest excitement to a continent, for people to duke it out for second and third place. I think that hasn't been working for a while. I don't know how much people even realize it or pay attention to it or take it seriously. But that was supposed to help a continent whose fate was sealed the first day of the month when there was like one big alliance on it and then nobody else was on it, was ever going to be competitive. And so there was no reason to fight. But if there's reasons for second and third place to fight and win second and third place, that's meant to add some excitement to Conquest. I don't know how much that's helped. I don't know how many people have stopped trying or given a shit about it because that reward system tends to break every true cycle. But it's meant to do with that, at least that. Other than that, it's okay if a continent's boring 1 month. That's just that's okay. I think some people probably don't mind having like a breather of a month and then going hard for the next month, you know. it's also because Loka is small that some continents are boring. Even if Loka gets very, very big, 75 to 80% of the population will still probably make it, organize themselves so that they're involved in the big giant fights. But the more players there are, the more chances there are for those players to matriculate into other towns, alliances, or continents, and then just by the nature of the population gets bigger, that in and of itself might make there be lots more fights on Kalros, for example, for a second and third place, which I think everybody probably agrees with this. The best fights are actually the smallest ones. The little 10v10s, that's the good stuff, man. Those are not only fun to watch, but there's real stakes and dying matters. And don't get excited that I said that. I'm not excited about. I'm not trying to say that we're open to like capped fights again. That's a whole thing. But anyway, I just think they're fun.
All right. Moving on. Towns 2.0. What does that entail? What's the outlook on that?
It's not coming up anytime soon, but what it means is it's just not only just as a quality of life updates for towns, but I wouldn't say profession, a town progression system where much more interesting than just like the current leveling. It's like towns can reach milestones, then unlock perks in a more interesting way than just like grinding 6,000 enchanting tables to get, enchanting up. So like goal-based progression that unlock cool things you can do in your town, or like unlock increased hopper count or item frame count, stuff like that. But that you have to, do stuff to unlock that, with the potential that it may also include something like a reputation system where just by joining a town, you don't instantly get access to all 25 levels of their perks. You actually need to like do stuff. You kind of almost level up in your own town in order to like reach a friendly status within your town that gives you access to everything. That is not a guaranteed feature though. It's a thought. The question is, do we want to punish people for moving towns all the time or not do that? So hadn't been thought through that much yet, but yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Yep.
Next up is new Nether and Netherite tools / trims. I can probably answer this.
Yeah, go for it.
Fine. So basically the intention long term is to redo the Nether. It's something we've been working on and we've made more progress on it in the last couple of months than perhaps any other time before. And I think, our goal is to get it out this year, perhaps sooner rather than later. The problem though is that it, requires a lot of development time, a lot of effort, which is why it's tricky. It also depends greatly around the amount of time that Mock has to do World Painter work, because that's, the main concern. It's also something that we've been trying to figure out how we're going to scope it. Whether or not we're going to do something similar to Oceans, where we, sort of cut long-term things that we really want to do. Like the Bastion, a dungeon for the Bastion, or if we're going to just try to do it all at once now. But with that will come Netherite. We, I think, are still committed to not having Netherite have any role in PvP, but we do want it for trims, for building, for tools as well. I know it has the increased durability, which is optimal. So that's definitely, sort of the idea behind it. Beyond that, there's not really a whole lot else to say. We're not really, we're not committed to a certain way that you're going to be able to grind it or gather it. But it will be dependent on the Nether.
It'll be cool. Cooler than just like, oh, the Nether blocks are all there now and you can just go mine them. Some of them will require more interesting things to do, which we will not reveal at this time.
We have some interesting mechanics in mind that I think people will enjoy. So next up how will Loka fix the shard wealth gap?
I think we kind of talked about this, but the one thing I will expand on is that rich players will always be rich, and rich players do not tend to spend their money. They don't really. Their value is in their holding lots and lots of shards. If not for the only reason of just saying that they're the most richest player on the server. So you can do things to sort of make people spend money, but you can't do things to force the top 10 richest players in the server to dump their wealth. That's just not how things work. That's not how the economy works. They're not going to. So we've made strides on this that we've already talked about that are already in game. But maybe in time will simply tell how much that helps. But you can't fix the wealth gap because some players simply want to make the money. And there's plenty of good ways to do that without grinding. They run the market, which is a very good way to get rich. And if that's the way that they do it, if that's the only way that they've done it, is like buying lores and reselling them for more money, or buying things off the economy, like off the market, buying out all the gunpowder and putting it up for more money. If that's how they make their money, and that's the only way that they make their money, then there's nothing we can do to stop them making money that way. So it's not as much of a problem as you might think. It is okay that some players are rich, provided they didn't dupe to do it. Har har. But there are certainly there is a need for more players to spend more money, and that's something that we have been doing and will continue to do. The question is, what is the next item that's as valuable as an AI, as an ancient ingot, that we can add to make people spend their money? Because that's where almost all the money on Loka goes right now, is ancient ingots. So we need another ancient ingot type item on the server that's like meta required. That's like half a joke.
It's kind of problematic because lores are like the most expensive item you can buy and sell, like single item. And, when your whole economy is based around basically collector's items, it does get a little tricky with people hoarding them. But I think the shard sink solution should help. Next up, speaking of shard sinks, what ways to combat inflation will be implemented? We talked a little bit about fast travel, but are there any others?
Well, I would say we've already done it. The biggest example, probably one of the biggest example that we just did, is the fact that we have reduced the volume of grinding mats that you can get out of Infested, while also adding a vendor at spawn that sells grinding mats at near, but not obviously. It's intentionally not market value. It's slightly more than market value because obviously, one, it's infinite. Two, it's easier to get than just somebody else grinding. If you reduce the ability for people to get all their stuff from Infested and then makes, you can't make them. It's hard to do that, but some people will choose to spend their money via NPCs because it's convenient and fast, and they might use their money that way. That's pretty much the way to do it. It's kind of the only way to do it, and that's what's the current case. But economic tweaks are not done. When done well, they do not reflect instant change. Sometimes it'll take months, maybe up to a year, for the state of the economy to sort of reveal whether that was successful. We're not going to wait a year to find out whether it was successful, but I'm just saying that the shard distribution charts may take a year to balance out, sort of. So yeah.
The next one is a little bit of a loaded question.
Spicy.
Just because this suggestion was very. Let me pull up the thread.
I like
just because this thread was very replied to and voted on. Basically, the forums thread, alliances ruin the point of the server. With my username tagged in it. Very nice.
Nice.
So basically, the gist of the thread, I think, is just these 4 points. Yeah. Reduce alliance size, limit cross-continent participation, rework or remove merc towns, and then encourage more smaller conflict. And I think we touched on some of this, but I think there's definitely, and this kind of leads into some of the other forums threads that we will talk about perhaps later, is that there's this sentiment that Loka has gotten very boring, which I think is valid because, you know, Conquest has been Conquest for a long time. Crypt can talk on that too, but I also think that like these threads have kind of taken that to the next level of like, we need to totally redo the way Loka works. And I think, I mean, Crypt, I'll let you talk more in a second, but the idea is that Conquest is kind of not complete, but in a way it's kind of finished to the point where we want it right now with what our goals for Loka are. If you want to talk more, Crypt.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts to this, and I'll try not to repeat myself too much since I have addressed almost all 4 of the points in that post, but I will attempt to do so anyway. Yes, I can agree that for a lot of people, Conquest is stale because it doesn't change that much, because it hasn't been a priority for us to change it that much, due to things like wanting to do advertising and stuff like that. You know, maintaining the thing I've repeated 1,000 times before, which is that Conquest is boring, partially because it doesn't change, but also because the people who are in the Conquest don't change either. So everybody's been fighting the same old bastards for 5 years. And so other than you get a handful of people unbanned and then they get excited and start like a big month or something like that. Without an influx of a bunch of new players that can kind of shake up like who's the power brokers of the month, you're gonna be fighting the same people in the same ways every month, and I can understand that gets stale. There's only so much we can do about that whilst not changing anything about how many people are playing on the server and who they are. So if we can have new players on the server, like if you imagine like some stupid YouTuber town with like 1,000 people that join the server one day with no attachment to anybody on the server and decide they want to go it alone, you can imagine that would change the dynamics of like the fights. The fights would all be the same kind of fights, of course, but then the people fighting and on which side they are would be quite interesting to behold. Ideally, anyway. Alliances. Alliances. That's a clickbait title, and I don't think even the person who posted that didn't say I don't really mean that. It's kind of hard to imagine Loka without alliances, because if you didn't have alliances, then it's literally every town on their own, and the concept of alliances is just like it's an obvious one. It's 5 different groups of players who like each other but all also want to run their own towns, and they don't want to just be one town each, would like to band together to fight off another group of people. So like in the realistic world, that's also a thing, and I don't think, again, the post doesn't say alliances should be removed, but it does break into 4 points, which I've talked about a little bit, and I'll just try to repeat my thoughts on them very quickly. Reduce alliance size. The reason we would do this would actually be if the server got too big and we needed there to be, I think, less alliances or more. I can't remember which way we did it. It was a population control concern. Dropping the 12 to 8 towns and alliances wouldn't change one thing. Some towns wouldn't get to be in the big alliance. Okay, 4 of the towns wouldn't get to be in the big alliance. But 98% of the population of those 4 towns that didn't get to be in the alliance would just move to the towns that would be in the alliance. Again, the whole concept of Concord could go it alone, and that's 1 town. And so that number, that arbitrary decision of going from 12 to 8 for alliance doesn't do anything like the way you think it would. Players will just move to where it's interesting. Most of them do not care what town they live in. They do not even know where their town is on the server. They just know it has a war room, they has gear, and then there's a big kit PvP fight that they go to and die, and then that's it. So we hard disagree that would do anything about the makeup of Conquest. What it would do is it might reduce the number of towns on the server. And I think that's why we've changed the alliance cap in the past. If only 8 towns could be in an alliance, then you can imagine that 4 of those towns that could no longer join just may not even be made by people. They might just decide to join one of the 8 towns in the alliance and then just not make their own towns. Limit cross-continent participation, which is similar to remove or rework merc towns, which we basically already talked about. It makes no sense in realism that mercs can control everything, but boy, I didn't want to try to bring real world politics into this, but without trying to name any countries, a country can have an outsized influence on its area if appropriately funded by an external party. So where otherwise that would clearly be not possible. And so it's technically realistic for mercs to exist as a concept. And again, I already talked about it. It's just more fun that players are not required to move continents, even if it betrays our original goal of there being like 3 unique continents that are isolated. It's just not as fun. And it just there are more negatives to getting rid of net merc towns than there are positives. In my view, in our view, I should say. And then encouraging more smaller conflicts instead of server-wide wars. That's second and third place, in my view. So again, if that worked correctly, maybe players would be more interested in doing it. Hopefully, that is meant to spur on more of those smaller fights amongst the crappy towns that aren't number one, or alliances that are on a continent. So, okay. So no, alliances don't run the point of the server. They're cool and fun, I think, and necessary.
Up next is it's all 3 forums threads in a row here, so buckle up. We've got the Making Conquest Alive thread, which to kind of summarize, and I've talked to Nikiso, is that how you say that? Hopefully I'm right, about it a little bit in DMs today, actually, but basically, this thread's points are, I guess that Loka has become stagnant. There's, 0 stakes world PvP. There's an AFK off season, lots of burnout, and failed retention, which some of those I think we disagree with, but, moving on through the summary, I guess, the solution that's proposed is a war locker, which is like permanent competitive gear, which would mean grinding for gear means nothing. You just have one set, basically. The second is a world reset of money and armor and weapons that aren't in your locker. Third would be an outpost system for Zyre, which would be basically King of the Hill. I think this thread is interesting because it tries to combine conquest and ganking into one sort of homogenous, this is Loka and everything's connected sort of thing. Which ganking was never supposed to be that way. Gank Isle was not made to be an intentional, it was made to be an intentional game mode, but ganking was not an intentional part of the server. It was something that happened and kind of destroyed the way that the end was supposed to work, which is why we created Zyre. Sort of in response to that. And I think this, again, points back to the sort of burnout thing as well that I think has been... there seems to be this like social theory that has overtaken the community that everyone is burnt out of the server, which I think is interesting, that everyone is kind of self-aware of that fact now, because I think it's something that Crypt can probably talk to this too, like it's something we've seen forever with the server. I just think a lot of people are feeling it at the same time right now. But I guess to kind of jump though a little bit, King of the Hill is something that we want to do on Zyre eventually. It's just something we haven't got because it's low priority. We also we don't want to commit to it and spend a bunch of time on it and not have people use it. Because people seem to be pretty happy with the Zyre islets like Cove, Fissure, Fracture, as they are now. And, would King of the Hill really be this big thing that people constantly play? We don't know, So
Okay. Well, and it seems that I don't know how to say his name. Nakiso has updated this thread as of today, perhaps not even that long ago, and it appears to have gotten even longer. Which,
I think the bottom part is an AI summary. He said that maybe is a little bit more more of a narrative type structure rather than like all the bullet points that are above.
I think that it's the problem with this post is that, like, and I mentioned this as a reply in that post, is it's an Uber post. It is difficult to handle it as a whole because it is like, well, here's like 10 problems and ideas I have about the server all at once, all in one post. It would be better in the future to split those into separate suggestion posts so that they could each be deliberated on by the player base and us separately, because some might be good ideas and some may be ideas we don't agree with, which is what I replied to. So I'm a little hesitant to rehash everything in there because I did reply. The Warlocker system, I don't see the purpose of that at all. I don't see what it solves. I don't see the point. Other than, if I recall, it had something to do with the sets are cheap and they don't mean anything. So when somebody drops their armor, nobody cares. But again, that's something that's always been the way Loka has been. It's like that on purpose. Sets are not supposed to be expensive. They're not supposed to be meaningful. They're supposed to be quick to get so that players can do Conquest quickly. So we don't care that everybody's got a million of them. It's fine. World resets, I guess that was Wordlocker stuff. King of the Hill on Zyre, we've talked about. It was an idea we had when we made Zyre in the first place. We just never, got around to it because it's just not been a priority. The PvP communities on Loka, even though things are stale, is the most well-served community on the server because it's a PvP server. And I get that most of these suggestions are obviously going to be about PvP. But there's plenty of ways to PvP right now and plenty of styles in which to do it. So it's not a critical priority for us to spend a bunch more time on PvP, especially when we want to kind of branch the server out into slightly more things than just PvP. So it is, again, it's this post is too big to talk about it all in once. So if he is here or wishes to break some of those pieces down into specific questions, I will, and if we have time, I'm happy to like talk about them. But it's too much. It's too much of like a gigantic post full of many ideas to talk about it all at once. So
yeah, I think another thing that was described to me in DMs that wasn't really described in the thread is that like people just play Loka for like ranked now, apparently, which I think is true. Crypt, I don't know. I think it. What did you say? How many ranked matches are people playing per day? There's some crazy numbers.
Over 2,200 matches a day these days on Loka.
Yeah,
matches,
which is a lot.
Awesome.
I mean, and that's something that we want. And I think the problem that was seen with that is that people just sit AFK for ranked matches all day, which it's tricky because that's not necessarily a problem.
Let me interject. And I did get to I saw that he said go to the bottom of the post. There is a bottom line for SOTS : and I will read it out loud. You do not have to brute force a massive economy change or make the server an endless grind, but you do have to accept the fact that the current open world is dead. No, we do not have to accept that. The two-world system doesn't destroy your vision. It finally organizes. It gives Conquest the stability it needs and gives the world the adrenaline it has lost. So, as I recall, this post is extremely passionate, and I love that because it means that you really, really care about Loka, and I love that. However, passion does not get to override reality, and the post makes it does one of those things where it starts an argument based on you have to agree X, Y, and Z, and then moves on to discuss things about X, Y, and Z. Except that we do not agree with the fundamentals of X, Y, and Z. So like we can't move on from that because you basically have to, you're assuming that I agree with you about some core fundamental pillars of the server, which I don't. I wouldn't say that the state of the current open world is dead. If that were true, there would never be radar ganks. There would never be anybody at RIs. There would never be things in the infested. There's plenty of things in the world to do. I think this player has a very specific set of interests on the server, which they love very much, but that does not mean that every other player on the server plays the way that you do. So, again, I'm happy with him assuming a gender, pardon me, but picking a couple things out for us to discuss, which I'm happy to do, other than just go, Loka's dead, and you have to agree with that. So, and because I don't. Obviously, if it was dead, it wouldn't be growing week after week, month after month, with lots of players that I've seen for years still playing and coming back. So.
Yeah. All right, moving on. The next one is the forums thread about the new punishment system. I think that Is
this the never unbanned cheaters one?
Well, there was two. That was the newer one. The unappealable ban. Okay, yeah. We can talk about both because they're both connected. Basically, the premise of the thread is that people that we catch cheating should not be unbanned.
Yeah. Everything is contextual. Cheating is obviously quite a binary thing. You are either cheating or you are not. But who's cheating how, and how old they've been on the server, they do matter. And also, people getting unbanned for cheating are some of our staff members. So I get where this is coming from, but it's hard to stomach this suggestion on Loka, the server, which is infamous for having the strictest and longest bans of like anybody ever. And even then people still think that nobody should be unbanned, which is kind of crazy to me. And the other post. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's funny because I think in the past people used to say, oh, why are you guys so strict? And now it's like,
be stricter.
We're not strict enough.
Well, I mean, I think that's good. I think
that
means that people have started to see the value of the length of our punishments, and especially when compared to other servers where somebody like hacks in a very important way, in a very consequential way, and then they get banned, and then they're like a week later they're back. And it's just like, well, then why? That doesn't stop them from hacking. That just means they get a slap on the wrist, as far as we're concerned. And the other post seems to just ask for a progressive system of banning people for less time, depending on whether they are new or depending on how much they cheat, which I think that they just don't understand that's how it already works. Sort of.
Yeah, I think we're pretty, it's funny because I think we don't even really know how we do know how things are perceived, but we don't really know, like, what does the average player hear about X person getting, right? Like we're on the complete opposite side of that. So nobody in the staff team really hears that arm of it as much as perhaps what the community hears. And I think for that reason, it's tough because we don't want to say too much about the nature of any ban that we dish out, because we can
give an example though. So like, for example, mouse tweaks is probably one of the most common things we ban for. Everybody seems to use it. Nobody seems to think it's bad. And so lots of people use it, or it's bundled in these packs that people hand to each other. A player who's brand new and who has mouse tweaks has a better chance of getting a temp ban than a full ban. But also, and I don't want to give away too much, it's like how your behavior matters when you're approached by a staff member and asked, hey, bro, are you cheating? Some people are like, no. And then we screen share them. And then, hey, look, there's cheating. Oh, no. I mean, they lied to our face. So those players get instantly perma-banned. Like, and I don't think anybody disagrees with that concept. Some players are like, you know what? That's my bad. You admit to it, basically. And you get a temp ban. I don't think we're giving anything away by saying that, because anybody who's been temp banned or banned can just tell their friends that that's what happened when they interacted with our staff. So it matters the kind of cheats you're doing. And how you behave. And like, importantly, it matters what kind of cheats. Because there's a difference between, like, I can see the argument for not expecting mouse tweaks to be bannable, versus somebody trying to be like, oh, I didn't know Doomsday wasn't allowed. Like, there's obviously a difference, and that's the thing. The post, we live in the gray area, and hacking is one of those things that we have some of the most binary like reactions to. You're either cheating or you're not. You're either permabanned or you're not. With a tiny little bit of wiggle room based on some of the what I would call lighter cheats, so to speak. Yeah, but the fact that like nobody deserves a second chance, that's a little intense to me. Like, and I was very surprised by that forums post, just because I didn't think there were people who thought we were not strict enough about cheaters.
I think part of the issue perhaps is that the community at least perceives there to be a lot more cheaters than the amount of people that we're banning. I think it's definitely something that keeps consistently coming up, and is even coming up in the state of the server chat right now. And yeah, there probably are. What is
that? I don't see that how we do or do not ban, or for how long we do or do not ban people. I don't see how that is going to change anything about people's perceptions. Like,
right.
If we permaban somebody, which we almost always do, and that permaban rarely gets appealed and unbanned, that person rarely gets unbanned in under like a year. A lot of players are not going to accept being banned that long, and they just start alting anyway. So then they kind of extend their ban even more in that regard. So players who want to cheat and alt, they're going to do those two things, and that's not going to change no matter what we do in this circumstance. So, and there's truly nothing we can do to stop people assuming that everybody cheats. Even if we were the #1 cheat detecting server on the server, players are still going to believe that everybody cheats, because unfortunately Minecraft makes it so easy to cheat that it's legitimate to assume that people are all cheating. But the reality is, you don't know. And if they're obviously cheating, they tend to get screen shared and banned. And then there's a lot of people who genuinely don't understand the meaning, the power that latency plays in Minecraft. 90% of like, this dude's using a lag switch is people not understanding how Wi-Fi works, or how again, bringing up the South American player playing the Turkish player, like how everything those players do is like 1/2 of an entire second delayed. And then you add Wi-Fi on that, and then you stare very strongly at their little ping latency thing in the duel. And the minute you see it go up, you think, oh, lag switch. And I'm like, and almost 99% of lag switch accusations are wrong. But you can't know that. You just assume it. What we know is like that player looks like that, their lag and their ping looks like that all the time they're on Loka at all points, not just when they're in a rank match. But when you show people a ping or a latency indicator, you give them the power to jump to conclusions, which is what commonly happens. So, we do the best we can, and that's all we can do. We will never, Loka cannot singularly stop people from just assuming that everybody cheats in Minecraft. That's just the game, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's a rough one. Wish it didn't have to be that way, but that's Minecraft, man. And it ain't specific to Minecraft, and it ain't specific to Loka. Every single game where there's competition in PvP has hacks, has cheaters, and has people complaining about it. So what are you gonna do?
All right. Moving on. Up next, we've got, how does the staff team prioritize different projects?
All right. I think it's an important distinction to say that the staff team, well, that's a pretty broad term. There's two teams on Loka, so to speak. There's the staff team, which I will call Guardians and Sentries. Then there's the dev team, which is like me and Foxy and Mock and Magpie, and those are like the 4 like leaders of the dev team. The dev team decides initiatives and projects. The staff team, which is to say Guardians and Sentries, they are not part of the decision-making process for what we do on the server in terms of like big things. Now sometimes their input is sought after for like, because they're, they play the game and they play PvP and I don't. So I need people who actually know how Minecraft works sometimes. I need their opinions. But they don't decide like what we're doing. That decision is almost uniquely made by like Magpie, Foxy, Mock, and myself. We decide pretty much what we're doing and why. So I don't know if there's more to be said about that. But that's the important distinction. I do want to kind of reiterate that I think that sometimes people seek staff positions because they think it means that they're going to suddenly be in the know or get to be part of the decision-making process for the future of Loka. And that's not really true. That's more like dev team high-level stuff. That if you want to be a sentry or a guardian, it's because you want to help chat moderate or eventually become a guardian and handle like cheats and hackers and have spectator mode, I guess. But it doesn't mean you're like suddenly part of the, are we going to do X, Y, or Z next month kind of thing, decision tree.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to give an idea of like how we choose what comes next, like it's kind of a combination of what have we not done that's like the oldest thing that needs to get done, and what is most realistic given the tech / manpower that we have. I mean, the docks thing, for example, like originally, as I kind of alluded to earlier, it was going to be kind of a small update. The reason that we decided to make it something much bigger is because at the time we had a lot of people who were really motivated to do it, and to make this sort of new version of the docks. And we also made a lot of strides into like using an actual project management sort of esque website that we've created. And, in that regard, like that's kind of why that took precedent the last, couple months. Moving forward, like we're kind of trying to look at more long-term things like the Nether, because obviously the Nether is something we've dropped the ball on for years at this point. It's, it's probably worse than the ocean update at this point. Maybe not that bad, but it's close to that point, So that's kind of why we prioritize certain things. We also do listen to the community too. Like the reason that I made Zyre when I did was because people really felt a need to have something like that at the time, which is why I spent 2 months world painting the original Zyre. So,
I mean, another way to look at it is that the staff and dev team of Loka, we're not paid. I'm not paid. I don't pay myself really. Like, we don't make enough money to do anything other than kind of use that to pay off bills and stuff like that. We're not like rich. So because we don't pay anybody, we can't reasonably expect people to always get things done because we say that they need to be done by X, Y, and Z. So what happens that means is that we give tasks to dev members, and in the free time that they have, they will get work done. And sometimes they'll just like, a month later, they'll be like, they'll get really, into working on something, or they're just a go-getter or whatever. I mean, and so something that they've been working on will suddenly become nearly complete. And then it will just be like, cool, you did your part. I'll implement it on my end, which is the sort of plug-in work stuff. And then suddenly something will be added to Loka. And so sometimes that's a way that something will be added to the server, which didn't seem like something that we were even thinking about doing. It's just because some dev member got the time to do whatever that they wanted to do. And thus, we added it.
A great example is the thing that we're going to show today is one of those, is very much one of those things. So, yeah. Moving on, what is the point of Ruined Essence?
I'll tell you later. Don't know. We're actually deciding still what to sell, what things you can buy with Ruined Essence. So we just don't know the answer to that yet.
The goal is to make sort of a mini economy around it, I think. Some type. We're just not sure what yet. We want it to be useful, obviously. And I think it's something that we kind of intend to sort of center around bosses like the Witch Hunter if we ever do more. Perhaps or it'll be something else, but things like that basically. Speaking of bosses, will there be a Horseman boss update?
There isn't planned to be one, but I think we should, just because it's an obvious opportunity to add another witch hunter thing somewhere in the world. So sure.
Yeah, it would definitely be cool to to do something like that at some point. It's just kind of a question of the time required to do it, I suppose. Next up is the 26.2 Sulfur Cave biome.
This is the most mid thing I've ever heard of in my life. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. It's extremely boring, and I don't really care until there's more to it, hopefully, than just what they announced.
I mean, we'll see where it goes, what else they add. It looks like we're getting some more building blocks, which is nice. The Sulfur Cube seems interesting as to how that affects or doesn't affect Loka. We'll see. Perhaps it will, perhaps it won't. I don't know. If it comes, I mean, I don't know when they plan on releasing it. Probably early or midsummer. Perhaps it becomes part of the Nether or something.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. If it's interesting enough for like a new continent biome, maybe we'll consider that too. Like if they add like volcano stuff, that's always something that I think I've always thought would maybe be cool, but just really depends where they go with it.
Seems like a week. Seems like they didn't have a lot to talk about. But I do want to say this much, because I know people like to crap on Mojang for what they claim to be is that Minecraft gets worse every single update, performance-wise. And I call bullshit. They have...
There's a question about this.
Great, then I'll talk about it now, because from a technical back-end perspective and from a game performance perspective, it has gotten better every patch. But what players have increasingly been doing is having these 300 mod pack freaking packs that do 900 things that they think Mojang's the reason their FPS went down from 4,000 to 3,000, which... Cool. If you're going for max FPS that you can't even perceive beyond like 200, depending on your monitor, or 300, great. But you can't perceive that change, and so just saying it got trash, I can never buy that. It's completely made up. I have a crappy computer, not that crappy, but it is a 5-year-old computer, and I only run sodium. And I've never noticed it change better or worse, if only it's gotten better every time. And then Minecraft is getting updated to Vulkan, which is a modern graphics pipeline, which actually should have far more important performance changes in the future, which may be the kind of change that people will universally finally feel one way or another. Mm-hmm. But every patch has gotten better, and if it's gotten worse for you, I'm not saying that you're lying and you don't know like which number is bigger than the other, but I don't think anybody's measuring this kind of stuff on the vanilla Minecraft client. I think they're doing it in the realm of their mod pack, which probably has mixed mods from old versions and stuff like that, and that taints the data. So I'm always dubious when everybody says like I can't play in this new version. I'm just like, I don't believe that. So anyway. That's just I think, I mean, speaking from experience, like
Minecraft was awful in 1.12, and that's when I guess I started really playing Loka to the point where, I was making a specific set of mods to play Loka with, i.e. Optifine, Performance, whatever. And since that point, it is drastic how much smoother the game has become. Even in the last, I would say, year or two, I think it's gotten a lot better. The problem, though, as Crypt alluded to, is that there are mod packs, some of which are distributed in mass to Loka, that just have the most random performance mods, which in some instances can have a big impact. But in a lot of instances, what they end up doing is they just add more memory overhead to your Minecraft, which means that it has to garbage collect more, which causes frame stuttering, or can in some instances, or just causes overall performance drops in ways that you can't really track. And oh yeah, it fixes this problem with the game, but in reality, it really does not. So I would suggest to people that you just play with what you really minimally need rather than just adding everything possible. Especially because now sodium kind of includes most of the stuff that the other like companion mods used to sort of have, beyond I think just the sodium like options mod. So, and I guess the other arm to this question, segueing, is that will Loka shut down? Will it ever stay on a legacy version? Update but block new content, or transition to mods or something else if Minecraft updates continue to be bad? Which I think is an interesting question. I think a lot of people are frustrated with the way that Minecraft drops have been, but in fairness to Mojang, this is some of the most consistent content that the game has ever gotten. And I think for Loka, even though we were just kind of crapping on the Sulfur update, in fairness to Mojang, like, this is something that is, mildly interesting and kind of cool. It'll be kind of fun to implement. It'll be kind of fun to implement in some way. Okay. Now, obviously some drops have been better than others.
I call poo-poo. There's like two completely different Mojangs right now, if you ask me. There's like a consistent team doing like genuinely good technical backend updates. Like not just, and a lot of it maybe you guys won't feel because it's like exposing more and more and more and more of Minecraft to be customizable by plugin developers, data pack makers, resource pack makers, and every patch they give us like cool new stuff to play with, which allows us all to make our own Minecraft versions of things better. Then there's the content team, and I don't know who's driving that boat, but it is like this cube, this new Sulfur cube or whatever the hell it is. It's like a novelty idea in isolation that maybe they built a feature around, but what does it do? What is it gonna do? Like maybe it's gonna do something cooler and I'm not giving it enough credit, and I think there's been some articles about this recently where Mojang basically admitted that they're like too scared to do big updates ever again. I'm still waiting, and I think a lot of us are. Give me an end update. When are you going to give us an end update on the level of, so when they did like the Nether update, they were cooking. Like that is a great, consistent, stylistically focused update. It had a lot of quality in it and a lot of interest in it. All these drops are random and they seem just drunk but however, we being the Loka that we are, we just take what they add and see if we can find a way to make it fit into Loka in a cool way. And so cool, they give us stuff to mess around with. I think that's cool. But not, it seems so commonly all over the place. There doesn't seem to be a real roadmap. I think they just kind of come up with random ideas and then decide that there's a drop around that. Like,
yeah, it also seems
baby
like
update. Maybe
it also seems like a lot of it is either cut content from previous updates,
true,
fireflies, or it's just, this is somewhat marketable, so we're gonna add it, which is fine. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining because the more big updates they do, the more work it creates for the development team to try to play catch up. So, give us like another year of nothing, and then we'll be happy. We'll be caught up, and we can add the rest. But yeah, I mean,
well, they aren't like
we'll never not update though. We'll always update. It's always
so to go through the bullet points of that question, will Loka shut down? I mean, obviously one day, but no plans in the near future. I mean, we're still cooking and having fun with it. No, we will not stay on a legacy version. We will stay on a version for a while. Like, here's an example. We're not going to go to 26.1 because I don't see a reason to do that. I don't see a reason to update Loka just for the babies update. So, but we probably might update to 26.2 with this Sulfur Caves and whatever else it is. And so that'll just be like that. We kind of do that every 2 updates is kind of when we choose to update. unless there's something in it that is like, this would be a clear value add for the server. And while there are technical cool stuff coming in 26.1, all the rest of it is just babies, so we don't really care. I mean, yes, that might make our loot crates cooler because we can swap the babies over to, the baby models or whatever, but transition to mods to increase performance. That's a big conversation about the quote-unquote Loka client that we're not going to debate here. But, and I also kind of talked about how I don't think Minecraft's getting worse every time, I just think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of people running with these big, massive packs, like Foxy said, that have so many performance mods it actually makes it worse, and then judging Minecraft updates based on your mod pack, which is a really bad idea. Yeah.
Moving on, we can pop back up. New achievements and titles for Conquest. It's a heavily requested thing that I think a lot of people want, but if you want,
yeah, we'd be down. In the service of trying to move this along, since this has been quite a long SOTS, and I guess there's also this thing that people want to see after we announce it. So let us attempt to speed things up. But in short,
we'll rapid fire.
Down for achievements and titles in Conquest, sure.
Yep. Oh yeah. Okay. This one I guess I can talk about. So obviously, as many people know, there is a rule that says a town, alliance, and group of players cannot host more than one tournament per year. Obviously, the first time that we've enforced it before, but we're kind of having to reinforce it now because the way that the rule works is that it's within the year, so it resets in January, which I think is something that a lot of people didn't understand about why we didn't do anything for the February tournament. But regardless, the way that it works is at the beginning of each year, the breakdown of who hosted a tournament resets. So Asgard could host a tournament in November, and then they could host one in January. But if they do that, then they cannot host another one until the next January of 2027. And then to give, I guess, a little bit more detail about the way the rule will be enforced, if your town is not aligned to anybody that has hosted a tournament for the whole period from the last tournament to the one you're bidding on, meaning if you leave your alliance at the time of the March tournament and then apply to do a bid for the July tournament, you can do that and then, be aligned with a town prior to that point that has hosted one. So for example, if TGen, allied with Asgard, I could leave our alliance when the April tournament happens, okay? And then I could apply for the July tournament. I know that this is a controversial rule. The goal behind it, well, there was two issues. First and foremost was that the rule previous to this was that each continent could only host 2 tournaments per year, which we thought was dumb because it's kind of arbitrary and still can kind of lead to the same town hosting a tournament twice. So that's why we changed it to be the way that the rule is enforced now. Obviously it's controversial, but it's also something that we kind of want to ride out and see. I mean, I think the fact that, I think it's 5 or 6 towns have applied to bid for this tournament slot is kind of telling that a lot of people want to host tournaments, but there's a huge limiting factor on the amount of slots, simply because the staff team only has so much time. So that's why the rule exists. It's so that towns and different alliances all kind of have a fair shot within any given year to do a tournament. The way that it works with having to leave the alliance or whatever, we don't want tournaments to be tied to alliances, but unfortunately it's the only way to really enforce the rule well, considering that the voting block for any given bid is literally just your alliance. So that's kind of why we've built it the way that we have. I think in the future, like if it really becomes an issue and, the whole, single tournament per alliance thing doesn't really work out that well, we could raise it to 2 tournaments per year per alliance. But I think for the time being, we're just going to stick with the way that it is, and just kind of see how it plays out over the next couple months. The idea again is to increase, the competition and sort of, quality that's put into builds, so that the quality matters more. Because I think people want tournaments with better quality. So, if there's more questions about that, I can talk after the state of the server. I don't want, as Crip said, we want to speed things up a little bit. So
yeah, we're going to do a little bit of a lightning round, and either say yes or no to some stuff, or potentially skip some questions that might be we might have covered.
Rewards for Riptide Roar times, probably. We eventually probably will have more than one track like that around the server. So yeah, probably is the easy version of that. Ocean monuments, they're coming. Yeah, it's just a matter of development resources. We've also, Swift Sneak achievements, that'll be part of the Nether update, I think.
Yep.
So yeah. Intention for a new continent,
very briefly, no. Not unless Mojang really blows us out of the water with some crazy biome update. It wouldn't change anything other than be just kind of cool. We're kind of better off adding biomes to existing continents.
Yeah, we'll probably just make the current ones bigger, as we have been. More quests like the Firestone and Waterstone, yeah. As to whether or not those would be more like stones, probably not.
Oh, come on. We got to do an air stone and an earth stone. But
an air, maybe. We'll see. Would we consider making webbed bolas disable swimming?
Well, you would consider it, but it needs more debate amongst LCRs. I think there is a danger in trying to make the bola the single one tool for preventing players from doing literally everything. I know it's supposed to kind of prevent kiting, but like at some point, where do you stop?
It can't just make a player stuck forever, where they're at. Like it's got to have some balance to it.
I mean, it's possible to make it just to prevent a player from toggling swimming, I think. But again, is that a responsible use of it? It's what point?
Yeah, what does that mean? Next up, siege machines. We kind of talked about this with the whole other objectives for Conquest thing. Probably at some point. It's just, I think right now it's not that high on the priority list because the Giga fights are less common, I think, in the last couple months, just A, because it's not the holidays, and B, because the Alliance breakdown has changed, so. More rewards for capitals. Yeah, we talked about this. That is planned. LokaCon.
Ask again some other time. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe in a long time.
We gotta
be. It's too small.
Yeah, who's paying for all that? 'Cause we don't got that money yet.
Yeah.
Also, you got to be 18 or older. I'm saying I'm putting my foot down.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. Yep. That already like knocks out like most of the nobody can really come. Tridents, yeah, that'll come with the Ocean Monument. It'll be, I don't know, we'll probably have some kind of changes we make, especially to the Riptide in the Rain, I think it is, where you can fly around. Similar to how we kind of dealt with spears. Long-term degradation of the player base, hyper-focused on PvP, conquest cycle being unrewarding, lack of interaction with the wider community outside of PvP. This is what advertising will combat. I think more than anything.
Let me tackle this one a little bit. I'm reading it. To Foxy's point, a lot of this has already been discussed. Not sure what lack of interaction with wider community outside of PvP, other than to say that yes, we are very deeply invested in trying to broaden the demographics, which again we discussed through advertising. So I don't know that I don't agree with the statement degradation of the player base. if you personally don't particularly like PvP players, then there's a lot of those on Loka, so you're gonna perhaps not jive with that. But I believe our community is more and more positive than it is negative. I think that's probably due to how strict we are about every damn thing. And then I say that, but I don't count Alliance Discords. Y'all get weird in those, but that's your own choice. But the number of increasingly people asking questions and receiving helpful responses on the server is something that's always gone up, not down. So it's a slow process, but I think the player base is improving, but I think we can all benefit from having some diversification.
Yeah, I also think that as time goes on, you start to know everybody. There's a lot of people that have been playing Loka for years, and once you kind of know everyone, like, it just kind of breeds tension over time between people, which is unfortunate, but it's also kind of ironically also what makes the community so strong. So
put it this way, since you and your lot, our team, we do a little bit of trolling. People remember that, so maybe that you baked yourself into a corner with that reputation. Har har.
Amethyst Shards and clusters, yes. This is probably coming sooner rather than later, actually. We have plans.
It's ocean content stuff, basically. Obviously.
Yep. IRL Trading.
Okay.
Longer.
We can't... This is a tough one. I'm not gonna lie.
Something that's hard to talk about.
Well, it's easier if you just be honest. The honest truth is that we make a good amount of money from that. And I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say that. And I think people would everybody knows that Loka gets a cut of the IRL trading situation, obviously, because somebody's buying orbs in the end. We don't like what we block is what we can realistically block on our platforms, which is that we just say you cannot advertise money buying services on the server in our public things. The issue is that there are many ways to just do all this crap in secret and back end channels and dark markets and stuff like that and still kind of do what you want to do without it being so obvious. I don't think we're prepared or capable at this time of taking a stance and trying to find out anytime anybody's ever done an IRL trade and start banning people for it. It's something we keep an eye on, but it is one of those really touchy things that is both beneficial to us, almost too beneficial to us, I would say, and something we can realistically block. So as long as we do our job of ensuring that it is still plenty easy to make money by grinding on Loka than it is to just fork over some money, then that's the real goal. IRL trading is always going to be every game suffers from this problem, obviously. And maybe in some distant future where we make so much money on things that don't involve IRL trading that we could decide to crack down. But at this time, money making on Loka is still so easy that people who are trading for bucks are saving time, but not saving that much time. Like some single players on Loka can grind unimaginable amounts of stuff if they really focus on it, and it's way more than people can really buy stuff for. So it's kind of it's one of those gray areas, more towards the black side than the white side on that one, but it's kind of a necessary thing. So we do a little bit of what we can, but we're not prepared to start banning people for it, if that's the question.
All right, moving on. Spear damage buff or movement ability nerf.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, basically the TLDRs we still don't really
We talked about it. That means we don't have to say it twice. I think Rama's late to the party, so he'll just have to catch up on this podcast part.
Next up is TGen /inhibitor module scaling.
I don't know what that means.
Fight. I don't think that's something. It's inherent in some of them already. So
Other than like the ones that scale sort of for Rivina, there's no plans. That's not a great way to do that without saying this. That suddenly, at X number of players, something changes, which is kind of rough and hard to put playing around. Yeah.
All right. Next up, will we add direct purchasing of treasure knife cosmetics?
I'm not going to say never, but we have no plans to do so. It's our literal bread and butter. It's literally what pays the bills. And to be able to buy them directly means everybody spends much less money. And that's the plain and simple truth. We at least have a dusting system, so we have ways of sort of catch up if you get dupes. But at this time, I don't think we can afford really to do direct purchases. Because when you do direct purchases, you can effectively take out 90% of your loot crate stuff, because that's not what people are in it for. And also, we don't have the dev team capable of pumping out enough high quality stuff where we could switch to a model like that. So kind of forced into the situation that we've got, even if it isn't necessarily ideal. But it's hard to make money in Minecraft if you don't want to be pay to win. So you kind of have to do what you can.
Yep. Increase rewards for second and third place.
Please come up with some and then stick them on the forums.
Yeah. Modules to make the attacking side stronger. The argument here is that the attackers should basically have stronger modules because they're like the losers, quote unquote, of the continent.
But the attackers get to decide when to fight. Although that argument doesn't hold a lot of water when everybody knows when everyone's going to fight, probably because it's always between 1 and 3 server time. But I think this requires data. I know there's a sentiment that attacking is somehow weaker, but again, you decide when to fight and when you can bring and whether you can bring enough people. I don't think modules are the problem here, and I don't think defending modules are winning fights by themselves. I think if you were to have spectator mode like me or any Guardian and watch what a Conquest fight looks like, the problem is not anything other than like kind of like the players. In a 200 player fight, I would put money on the fact that 15 players only are doing things like objectives, and all of the rest are just fighting for funsies, or, I can't tell you how many groups and I don't have to tell you, you guys are in these fights. How many times in a giant fight or even a medium-sized fight, there's 15 players off in the corner underground. Now, what are they doing? I will admit that when you have 200 players in a fight, 200 players cannot all be doing objectives, but the number of objective players is an extremely small minority of players. And so it's not just the attack the modules are the problem. I mean, no, the players are the problem. I mean, the shot callers and the group leaders are the ones that are supposed to kind of get people to do stuff. We are keenly aware of how difficult it is to convince players to do anything in a Conquest fight. So most people are just bodies. So I don't think the onus is on us, perhaps. Not to say that balancing of modules isn't something we could do. I don't think it's in a really bad spot anyway. I do think the modules are kind of boring for a lot of players, though. That's fair.
Next up is combating cash running of new players. So basically, people join a town and then they get instantly killed.
So it is part of the new player experience. The quest line tells you about player vaults. And so we've given players some semblance of ways to protect their stuff. The only thing I think that we don't yet do is basically just pop up a giant warning box to a player joining a town, perhaps for the first time, that says, you might get killed and your stuff stolen. You accept this risk. Beyond that, at some point, players got to learn, I guess. Yeah. If it got really bad, I mean, the thing is there's not enough new players to see that this is a really actually critical issue. this is something we'll find out if we start getting lots of actual new players. Yeah.
Next up, new continent for Balak. Basically, just new tiles. I think I can probably answer the no. It's just not worth our time.
I mean,
frankly,
yeah, we don't have the dev team resources for it, but if like one day after the Nether comes out, just as if Mock was listening, I'm not against like somebody just making a new Balak one day, but it's not a trivial thing to do. I can admit that like Balak and Rivina probably specifically are both kind of. It would be cool if we get like a new version of both. We just don't have the dev resources for it. So if you happen to think yourself a good world painter, and you would be interested in applying, that is how these things could come to pass.
Yep. All right. Well, I think it's time for our thing.
Oh, I have two things actually. There's two things that fit under question mark. The first one.
I don't even. What's the other one?
I know, it's exciting. Even you don't know. You do
I don't even know the
once
other
I've
one.
done it. But I would like to announce that we have a new elder in our midst. So young Kaph decided he wants to be an old grown-up person, an old washed-up grown-up person like me and Radis and Magpie and all the rest. So big congratulations to Kaph for turning golden. And I'll hit the button.
Guys.
I forgot there's like a promote button. I didn't do the in-game thing. I hope a state of the server announcement is satisfactory. Please accept my apologies. Let me click the button. Oh, you already did it. Awesome. Anyway, congratulations, Kaph.
Thank you guys. Much appreciate it. I'm looking
Now
forward to being your
redirect
guys' resident old boy.
Yeah. Please continue to direct less DMs towards me and more towards him and other people. Thanks.
This is just a DM pawn-off scheme.
Yeah. And last but not least, I am now restarting Spawn. There's a new gank aisle. Congratulations.
I can stream it in a second, I suppose.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, we are replacing Fisher with a new gank aisle. That's why we did the community vote. Although I think we all knew what the answer to that vote was going to be. That is why we did it.
Yeah, it will be replacing the fissure map for the time being, because we're not gonna have like 4, 5, 6 gank aisles. We'll just probably keep the top 3 in rotation. So,
Yep.
So this was a long SOTS. So thanks for sticking around. It's obviously longer the longer we wait to do them. But kudos to Kaph and Foxy. Since I wasn't really part of the process, please tell everybody who made the new gank aisle so that they get appropriate kudos.
Yeah, so list here, hold on. We got our main two were Xanity and Cotton. These two guys are kind of the goats of the development team at the moment, but also contributions from myself, Mock, Fligment, Thorny. I don't want to not say names.
You started saying names, and now you have to.
Yeah, no. No, I think I got them all. I think I got everybody. All right.
I think there was a few questions that I will answer really quickly. I guess it's just one. Unappealable ban, the second ban. I'm not interested. We've already talked about our ban stuff. Smaller fights stop being sharded. It's more that it's a consistency stake for the way things are sharded. Which is to say that to have some fights randomly be sharded and some not introduces complete changes to how the server works, or like how the fights work. So for there to somehow be fights that you can walk into or not walk into, or fights that have walls and don't have walls, is not the goal. So yeah, all fights will remain sharded. If there's bugs for that, that's just bugs we should fix. But there's no good reason to have an inconsistency there, basically. Okay, and I will call that the end of questions and call it a day. So if you stuck around till the very end, thanks for sticking around till the very end. We will hopefully do one sooner than later with less pent up discussions, so that we can have a slightly more terse one. So, but thanks for everyone, of course, for sticking around. If it was your first, congratulations. And we hope to see you at the next one. Bye-bye.